activities of leadership, we're going to be talking about getting to work. Here we go.
Well, good evening. One of the things that we learned in leadership in Napa Valley was to have a backup plan. And fortunately, we were skeptics of technology, so we brought some overheads just in case. Our group was called Getting to Work, and we came together as a group of people who were interested in transportation in general, and but with very diverse interests. If you'll remember one of our first days with John Glazer, and we did a whole day session and we talked about community-based activities and working from your points of interest. Well, when we began to form as a group, we realized that we had significantly divergent interests. Before I go too much farther, let me introduce our team. We have Kathy Patterson, Chuck Eason, Greg Winter, Terry Longoria, and I'm Debbie Wheeler. We decided to put this slide up early in the presentation, but it actually didn't come to fruition. We'll have to take that straight, kind of need this tape here. It looks nice and neat when you see it up like this, but we were well into our project before we were able to get it into a succinct format. And our vision was to work on affordable, available, accessible, quality transportation that is responsive to the needs of the Napa workforce. As all of the groups that have presented before us this evening, we went through the same struggles. We had the challenge of wanting to do something meaningful, something unique, and to leave something solid in the community. We also struggled with where do you start? This issue is huge. We learned about the Bay Area transportation groups and CalWorks and Napa County's efforts and Napa City's efforts. And we didn't know how we were going to tie all of this together. When I spoke earlier about our interests, each of us had specific interests that we wanted addressed. One of our concerns was how to get the workforce into Napa County and particularly up Valley. We are an importer of jobs, and we bring people from surrounding counties because of the affordability of housing. So clearly, one of the challenges in the future will be how do we get the workforce here that we need to keep our industries running smoothly. Another interest was the whole situation on Highway 29, both on weekdays and on weekends. For those of you who live in Napa Valley, and you try to go anywhere on the weekend and use Highway 29, you know that it's a very difficult thing to do. Another interest was the whole environmental issue of how do we keep our air clean? How do we don't have a lot of room to expand with our highways, and yet we're becoming more congested. So what do we do about the pollution issue? And lastly, somewhat tied to the first one, but in a very different way, the needs of the poor in getting to work. The group that Terry works with often are able to locate jobs, but are not able to get to the jobs. You know, they've got old clunker cars, and the car breaks down, and then what do? How do they get to work? If they can't get to work, they lose their jobs, so it becomes a vicious circle.
As Debbie pointed out, part of our group's activities evolved around getting to a project, and our group dynamics were pretty diverse from the beginning. I came from a housing field. We really had no experts in transportation. Chuck works in small business. We had a president of a local business. Terry worked with the low-income persons. And with that diversity, we all brought different skills to the table and really different interests. And I would have to say probably about 3 months of the project, just getting to something that we could all agree on as far as what we were going to do. We worked as a group. We met about 2 times a month, usually bi-monthly. Chuck was gracious enough to allow us to meet in his office. And in those group meetings, the first thing that came out was that we really didn't have a leader. We all kind of worked in similar capacities and shared the responsibilities throughout the entire project. Next, I wanted to point out that we all were extremely busy in our own personal interests and careers, and it made it extremely difficult to spend a lot of time together or arrange, so we were all using facilities like the internet and the phone and the fax to communicate. As far as the process was concerned, we had a lot of things here that we did in terms of meeting with different various agencies and professionals in the field to learn about what we consider to be important issues for Napa County transportation. First, you'll see up there we met with Chris Fallon. We invited her to come speak to us about what plans were going to be implemented as far as the Trancas interchange on Highway 29 and all of the projects going on around the flood control and what was going to happen with coordination of transportation when you shut down the 3rd Street Bridge or the 1st Street Bridge. Members of the group met with Public Works and discussed what their plans were or what they saw as potential issues in the community. Then we really got to somebody who was an expert in the field. We found out that there was no longer what was considered to be a congestion management agency, that locally it had been changed into what's called Napa County Transportation and Planning Agency, with its president, Mike, or director, Mike Zedon. And Mike was able to direct us in a very specific area as far as what had already been done and what information was already out there on the table. Some of the things that we did besides that, Terry and I rode the bus one day just to get a hands-on experience as far as what the Up Valley Transit was like. We also reviewed the joint plans that had already been produced, which were very voluminous. We're talking about hundreds of pages of information, and I'm sure everyone here read that. And that was helpful in terms of finding out what we wanted to do. Once again, I think it was important for us to bring our own interests to the table and share them and try to reach some goal that we could accomplish. I think the one thing that our group had in common was a sense of completion. We didn't want to take on something that was going to be so large that it wouldn't have been completed throughout the tenure of our group meetings. We wanted something that was going to reach about 9 months maximum, and we were going to have some results that we could look at.
I know that when I participated in this project, I wanted to make sure it was something that I would get a lot of benefit from in the rest of the work that we did. And I think all of us were trying to make sure that it really kind of paid off. When we looked at, like a lot of you said, oh, it looked like everything had been done. That's kind of how we were feeling when we were looking at transportation. We knew there were big issues. But we did discover that the issues are very complex and congested, if you'll let me use that word, especially as it relates to transportation. There's a lot of political entities that are involved, and a lot of people who have a lot of information and not the money that they want to have to do the projects that are out there. We each, as Debbie said, we each had our own interests and different perspectives. Any solutions that we came up with, or anything that we wanted to look at, really cost a whole lot more money than Jill would let us spend. So we decided that we really needed to try to focus down and do some problems that we could really get a handle on. Some of the things that we talked about were, we thought maybe we could reduce the congestion. Figured maybe that wouldn't fall in the budget. We figured we could hire ourselves as consultants to the city of Napa, who was always looking for consultants on two-way streets. But that got smashed early on by the political, unfortunately. We talked a lot to Kathy, who was really concerned about the congestion around schools and the problems kids had with buses. At Redwood, for example, and we were very interested in that Highway 29 interchange and what was going on there. At Redwood, some of the kids have to wait several hours if they miss their bus, if they live up valley, and that's a great concern to the schools. And sometimes, as Kathy pointed out, the kids miss their bus on purpose, and they can say to Mom, I missed my bus on purpose. And you just had the gang thing a few minutes ago, and a lot of what we know is, idle hands cause problems. So we thought that was the big issue. And then one of the things that we were concerned about was the impact of flood control on downtown. And what we had heard was that flood control on Highway 29 might be happening at the same time, and we were concerned that there was no way to get around Napa. And could we solve that problem? I decided probably not. Bicycle paths were done last year, so we decided not to take that track, but we had a lot of interest for a lot of us who really enjoy bike riding. The links to ferries and BART was kind of interesting because after an event we had at Health and Human Services a few years ago, where the transportation agency came in and said, "This is so great, you can get on the ferry and you can go to San Francisco and everything will be great, and you've got all your links, and the Napa Valley Transit goes right to the ferry and stuff." I told my sister who was commuting to San Francisco about this thing, and she said, as she called me up one day, she goes, "Thanks a lot, Terry, I just waved goodbye to the bus because the ferry was late." So we were thinking about maybe doing something to see if there was something else we could do with ferries and BART. And then tourism traffic solutions. But we heard on Tourism Day that the numbers of tourists are really down a lot. So we needed to put the project together a little bit more succinctly. I had a particular need, the last part of this, a particular need to try to deal with the folks that were going to work. And one of the things that you all know about me is I love working with people and groups and organizations, but I hate things that are cold like transportation. And I've really had to force myself into this transportation issue because it's very, very important to people that need to get to work. And as Debbie mentioned, a lot of our people drive clunker cars or don't have cars or lose their cars because they don't have the registration or they can't afford the insurance. So we really felt a need and talked a lot about trying to see if there was some kind of a transportation coordinator that we could establish, particularly for CalWorks recipients, to try to get information about how public transit works and also a 24-hour response that would be helpful not only to the recipients but also to employers, because we know that one of the number one reasons why people lose jobs that they have is because they can't get to work the next day. And there are two areas that that comes from. One is child care or a sick child, and the other is from transportation. So if we could do something about creating some kind of transportation coordinator who people could call and say, "I can't get to work tomorrow," that could solve a very major problem.
The main focus of our project was, I came out of our meetings with Mike Zidane, who is the head of the transportation agency for the county, and we found out that they have money that they're able to spend and want to spend on the public transportation system. A year ago, Jay Kaplan and company did some research for the Public Works Department, and that's the big, thick book that Greg was talking about. Part of that process was that they did a study of the people who were already riding the bus, the Vine especially, but public transportation as well. So they had information about the people who were already riding the bus services, and we decided that it would be helpful if we could do a survey of people who were not riding the bus but are employees up Valley, and we would want them to either take the bus or at least find out that it was available. We suggested this to Mike. He thought that was a good idea and would be helpful to his committee. So we developed a survey, and we used the 1998 on-board survey as a point of reference, but all of us put our input into the survey as to what we felt should be asked. And this is what we came up with. So it's probably not going to be very clear to all of you out there. But it's a one-page survey, front in English, the back was in Spanish. And basically, we gave them a little bit of information at the beginning and said, have you ever considered using public transportation? Currently, for $40 a month, you can have unlimited use of the Napa Valley Transit System from Vallejo to Calistoga and points in between. There are 7 round trips between Napa and Calistoga and 13 between Vallejo and Napa. There are plans to expand the service, and your input is very valuable. Please take a moment to fill out the survey and drop it in a box at your place of work, or fax a completed survey to, and it was Chuck's fax number. We distributed this survey to 12 businesses in the upper Napa Valley. From you see the list on the back, from the Veterans Home, we used the Temp Services, Alcar and Nelson, we used the wineries, and we actually distributed 4,000 surveys. Rex was great. He put an article and put the survey in his mailer, so it went to 300 businesses in St. Helena. And we posted this so that people would be incented to fill out the survey and get it back to us. So this was posted at every business. When we contacted the business people about distributing these surveys and what we wanted to do, we were just met with a great deal of enthusiasm because businesses up Valley know how difficult it is to get employees up Valley to work, because most of the entry-level employees can't afford to live up Valley, and so they're all coming from various places. And public transportation is perhaps a key factor in this. So they were very enthusiastic. They all, except for one, put it into their payroll envelopes, which was a great benefit to us. So it made sure that the employee got that survey, and we got a fairly decent response, which I will let Chuck talk about.
First of all, too, here's a list of the different employers we distributed to. And one of the things we did as an incentive was offer a drawing for free dinner. So we tried to get them to fill out the survey, so they put the name at the bottom. As Kathy mentioned, we distributed 4,000 surveys, and we got a total of 149 surveys back. We had a little bit of a problem with the technology glitch that had my fax number on it. My fax machine actually had to be down 1 week during the peak time when there was the college switched over phone lines. So we lost a few. We had 136 responses in English and 13 in Spanish. And we compiled all the results in Microsoft Access. The Napa County Transportation Planning Agency actually requested we do that so they can do some cross-tabulation later on. So we're going to provide that disk to them so they can do some more analysis. Here's the responses we got back. First question we asked was, where do you need to commute? And we got a whole variety, probably about 20 or 30 different answers. I put up the top three. Number one was from Napa to St. Helena had 38 responses. From Napa to Yountville had 15 responses. And then from Napa to Napa had 13 responses. The second question we asked was, have you used the Napa Valley Transit in the past? And the interesting thing here, I think, is that almost 65% have never even used it, so 35% has never used it. Then we asked a question to rate the importance of several different items that we came up with. And you can't read this too well, but it says for faster service, that's actually pretty important. About 40% responded saying very important. Lower fares, again, it was fairly important. 20% neutral, within 30% or 32% rated as very important. Bike racks were pretty much even across all the categories, so there wasn't anything stood out for bike racks. Night service, that's something that 39% said would be very important. Sunday service as well, that's not quite as important as was night service, but at 30.5% was very important. And then park and ride, I think most people answered neutral is very important. Then we asked, what are some of the reasons for you not using the transit system? First thing was, I don't feel safe. And I'm looking at the response here. They say most people feel safe on the system. They either strongly disagree up to 50% neutral. So it looks like they do feel like they're safe on the system. That wasn't a major factor. It is not convenient. About 30% said they agree it's not convenient. Greg mentioned that he rode it up to St. Helena that day. What time did you guys get Terry to? It got up probably about 5 o'clock, I think, to get up there.
5:30 for an 8 o'clock meeting.
Greg didn't mention I gave him a ride home that night. So.
Who took care?
We had to wait till 7 o'clock at night to get home. And when you get up there at 7 o'clock in the morning, there was no place we had to wait for the places to open up to eat.
Right. It takes too long. Again, 31% agree with that. It doesn't go where I need to. Well, it doesn't go up like the Silverado Trail. And can't understand the schedule is pretty neutral. And how important is the main terminal in downtown Napa? That's not important, 35%. That's kind of interesting. And then we had a question then on clean air vehicles. You know, how much would you be willing to pay an additional fare to pay for clean air vehicles? About a quarter of people said 0. But I thought it was kind of interesting, if you look, most between 25 and 50 cents, but there was 10% that said they'd be willing to pay $1. How many of you would be willing to pay $1 for, say, natural gas or less? So now that we've completed the survey, some of the follow-up plans, we're going to be giving a presentation to the Napa County Transportation Planning Agency. Looks like it's in the works to hire the California Transportation Coordinator. And then we also want to pass on the results to the employers that participate and let them know what we found from this survey. And we also want to announce the winner tonight of our drawing. Yeah, the winner is Gloria Galvan, and she's actually out of Calistoga. We have dinner for two up in Calistoga at Puerto Vallarta restaurant. And then all of you are also winners tonight because we have pins and candy to pass out as well.
Can you help us?
That's it.